Hello and welcome to Literacy Matters. My name is Cheryl Lundy Swift, and I'm so excited to have Miriam Ortiz with me. Miriam, thank you so much for having this conversation with us.
Sure, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, why don't we first start by just you telling us a little bit about yourself and your work as a literacy professional?
Sure. So my literacy journey, I guess, if you want to call it,
Sure.
started in my undergrad and graduate school at Florida State University. And I worked with some really great professors there and the Florida Center for Reading Research. And then as a classroom teacher, I taught reading, math, and science to students with behavior disorders. Then at Southern Methodist University, that's really where it took off, where I worked with just some amazing researchers in the field of early literacy and early literacy development. And I was able to then learn so much and teach some courses in literacy acquisition and literacy assessment and deliver several professional developments, and just seeing the importance of foundational literacy skills and early literacy, and how that impacts students, not just in elementary school, but throughout their entire education and in adulthood as well.
Of course, absolutely. Well, I love, obviously you have this love for teaching and learning. And as we think about our wonderful teachers, right after the week of teacher appreciation, as you know, some parts of the country, teachers are quickly coming to an end of their school year. And in other parts, they have a month, more or less. What advice would you give teachers to keep their literacy momentum at this time of the year?
Well, the first thing I want to say is keep it up. Don't give up. There's still time to impact your students. Really continue that intensity. We're finding more and more often that with more intensive intervention and the right tools, we can actually attain less learning loss in the summer. If we really keep, intervening strongly and with fidelity, through the end of the school year. So don't give up.
Well, speaking of summer, right? So that's really great advice. And speaking of summer, I've got to tell you that, what can teachers do to help children maintain those literacy skills, or even grow them during the summer?
That's a really great question. And I know that it's difficult because as teachers, we don't really have access always to our students during the summer. So I would suggest really thinking about resources that you can provide to the students and to the families so that they can use them during the summertime. Thinking about, free books that are available maybe online, or thinking about local libraries and sharing with the families the activities that happen there at your local library. And if nothing else, just even encouraging families to read to their children, right? That goes so far. It builds language. It really helps build background knowledge as well. And there's so many other benefits other than just literacy benefits. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I think we forget that in the impact that just reading to our children can have, reading together. So.
Sure. I mean, so, when I think about families supporting their children, some of them may be thinking, well, what really can I do? Or what should I even be reading? Do you have any advice specifically for families?
So for families, that's a loaded one. Anything that really interests the child, you want to think about that. That's really important. Something that really is of interest and going to hold their engagement. Also thinking about reading together versus just having the child read on their own, so that you can really support the child if they're not fluent readers or if they're making errors. That's something that's really important. And then also there are lots of places online where you can find free activities and free books that, like I mentioned before, I've worked quite a bit. I'm from Florida, so the Florida Center for Reading Research at Florida State or the University of Florida Literacy Institute, they both have really wonderful resources that both teachers and families can use to support their reader.
Thank you for mentioning that. We'll definitely make sure that we put those websites, connect them to our website as well. So when we think about like reading, there's some children that think of reading as a chore. It's something that they don't enjoy. How can teachers make learning to read fun and meaningful throughout the year, but especially at this time of the year?
Yeah, that I can totally relate to that. I have two little early readers, a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old boys. So keeping them engaged at the end of the year, I can totally get that. So I would really suggest if you can play literacy games or create games or find resources where you can practice reading. So practice letter sound. So even building trail games where, you can roll a dice, and when they land on a letter, they practice that sound, or when they land on a word, they practice that word. Those are always really helpful. To help build fluency and prosody, if you can do plays at the end of the school year, or even just as part of your, maybe not something that you're actually going to present to families, but something within the classroom, right? So reading plays and acting them out in the classroom, that's always really engaging. And then one thing that I remember, when I was in 3rd grade, I had a teacher read us Charlotte's Web. And then once she was done, she would read us a little bit every day. And then when the book was done, we actually got to watch the movie. And I still remember that. That was so impactful and engaging, and just gave me a love for reading. So that's just something, those are a few things that we can try here at the end of the school year.
That's awesome. Do you remember that teacher's name?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, I do. Her name was Miss Powell.
Wow. Well, shout out to Miss Powell for really, really just kind of fueling your love for reading. That's amazing. Now, when I think about, she ignited that love of reading for you, but, there's some children out there who are still struggling with reading, right? What can teachers do for those students who are still struggling, especially right now? Like what can they do if they're still not making the progress that we think they can make or we want them to make?
I'm going to go back to what I said earlier about keeping up that intensity, the amount of time that we really dedicate to building those foundational literacy skills, and really thinking about maybe adding additional minutes of instruction for specific skills that the students are struggling with, and knowing where those gaps are for each student. And I really always strongly recommend doing some formative assessment that is really connected closely with the curriculum or with what they're learning now, to help you identify those gaps so you can really target it and hit those hard at the end of the school year.
Sure. So I love that you say, don't give up. Now, so is there one thing that you'd like to leave us with or highlight for our audience today?
Sure. Really, that it's not too late, right? I know school is almost over, the school year is almost over, but it really isn't too late to make an impact on your students and to really help them get ready for that next school year and to help them get ready for summer.
Awesome. Well, Miriam, it was absolutely a pleasure learning from you, and thank you so much for all the advice. We hope that teachers are going to be able to continue to move that needle, even at the end of the school year. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity.